Hi, Shamara. Let me know when you can hear me. Hello. I hope your visit with your mom was nice for the rest of the week last week.
Yeah, it was lovely. And then she left
Oh,
us.
yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad you guys got to have a nice visit. So,
Yeah, it was
your
great.
husband's still gonna be away for a little bit, right?
He's back unexpectedly.
He's
We work for the
back.
government and they made us all come back.
Oh, okay.
Makes no sense. It's pointless to even think about why they would pay for him to go there and then come back. So,
Oh, that's nice though, because he was going to be
yeah,
gone for like almost a month, right? So I
exactly.
mean, it's nice for you guys.
Absolutely. We were, he surprised us on Sunday. That was
Oh, that's
nice.
sweet. Have fun. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, I bet
Yeah.
that was a really exciting moment when he was like, surprise.
Yeah, he called like he normally would to say goodnight,
Oh.
and then the doorbell rang. I was like, oh,
Wow.
that was fun.
Oh, that's cute. He's
Yeah,
like, love you, sleep well. Ding dong.
ding dong, it's me. So yeah, it was good.
That's nice that he rang the doorbell, especially since it was nighttime, so he didn't just terrify you.
That would have been. Oh, I know. It was in the middle of the night, and I woke up, and he was like in bed next to me. I would have been like, "Oh."
Oh, well, I'm glad he's back. That sounds really awesome that he's home. I bet your son was super
Oh
excited.
yeah, he was so
Aw.
excited. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Very sweet. Okay, so I know last time we just got cut off because my internet just decided to go crazy there for I don't even know why, but my husband got it all fixed, but he had to contact the internet people and all the stuff. So I don't know exactly what happened with that, but it's working today. So we're back. So
Congratulations.
yes, thank you. Diving in today, I know last time you had talked about working on a script for AI. So are you wanting to do more like narration, how to? What are you thinking?
I think we'll stick with the narration.
Okay, great. So let's see. Any other thoughts that you can think of?
I think we were working on some sort of an antidepressant article or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
If I remember correctly.
Mm,
That's what I have in my notes. I don't know.
yeah, cool. All right. Okay, so I found looks like an article that talks about the age of AI. Let's see. Okay. It's a little long, so let's chop out some. Mm, okay. All right. So I just took out a chunk in the middle. So if you go, well, that's a weird transition, that's probably why. Okay. So that one's about AI. And then let's see.
And so for things like this,
Yeah.
would we want to be kind of upbeat, right? Because we don't want to bore them to death.
Fair, yes.
Then is this one where we're saying we might speak a little bit faster?
Well, I think it depends on what it's used for. I feel like this could be for something like a documentary. It could be for maybe a museum display, like that you're walking through and it talks to you as you go. It could be something that's more like an audiobook. I feel like it could potentially be multiple different things. So the first thing that I like to do is decide what is my target audience for that script. So who am I talking to is I think one of the most important things to look at. So what do you think? When you read through this, what does it kind of strike you as?
Like we're watching a Netflix documentary on
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I agree. Great. Okay, and I found one on depression as well. So, yeah, I could definitely see that there's, a documentary that they're doing on the development of AI and how it's being used today, just to kind of give people an inside look about what it can be used for and the future of AI and moving forward, what it might look like in the future. So, yeah. So, I feel like if that's the case, it's educational, but it's also entertainment at the same time, right? So I want to captivate their attention. I want to draw them in. I want them to get excited to learn about this. I want to make them curious. I want them to ask themselves questions and to really lean in and be excited about what I'm going to say next, right? So, I want them to watch the next episode or whatever. So I want them to be really curious and interested. So I'm probably going to make it a little bit more dramatized than I would if I was doing, say, an audiobook narration about it, because it is for television then, and it is part of their entertainment. Yes, audiobooks are entertainment too, but I feel like they can be a little bit more um consistent, I would say. And when I'm doing something that is specifically for television, I have to keep in mind that this is time that they're probably, snuggled on the couch, eating popcorn, maybe they want to learn something, but they also want it to be entertaining. So I'm probably going to put a little bit more energy into it, a little bit more drama into it, leaning into stuff like science fiction, um, or like self-driving cars, um and two, for I think the younger generation, AI is going to just be part of the world they grow up in, and so it's just going to be common to them. But I think for older generations watching this documentary, so, maybe people who are like 40 and up, it really is probably feeling more like sci-fi, and making it be like mind blowing, what even is AI? Because I definitely could see somebody like my grandpa or someone just being like, he's in his 80s and he's probably
Newfangled.
like, yeah, I doubt he uses AI or really knows much about it, Um, so yeah, I could see him being curious and going like, what even is it? What does it do? Because for him, he grew up, digging ditches by hand for the local cable business, and it's like the kind of stuff that he would have grown up with would be very different than our world now. So if I think of talking to somebody like him, watching a documentary on TV, this really probably does feel exciting and mind-blowing and, like huge scientific breakthroughs and things that maybe in sci-fi books when he was growing up, this kind of stuff would have been science fiction, things that were just totally mind-blowing and seemed impossible. So yeah, I think playing up that it's exciting, it's new, it's, you know, groundbreaking, it's mind-boggling, and it's a whole new world. So making it sound a little bit more exciting and, mysterious and intriguing and like almost magical in some ways, you know? So yeah, I think that's probably what I would do if I was going to do it more for that kind of a situation.
Mhm.
So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like um yeah, I think energy is going to be important here. Um my guess is if it is like a Netflix documentary, like certain things you'll say, they'll probably flash, they'll be able
Mm,
to see some of the things that are being discussed, like when they
right.
talk about, composing music, there might be somebody, playing the
Hmm.
piano or something,
Yeah,
um, and so basically it would just kind of be like a overdub, I guess, of,
right, exactly. Right. That I'm sure that, with it being television, they probably are going to be showing them different things. So, yeah, like at the beginning, maybe they could do like flashbacks to some like science fiction black and white shows or something. And then you can have people on their cell phones now and, using
self-driving
AI with
cars.
their car and in hospitals. And, then you could have like a cartoon bubble man like, puzzling over something with a big question mark on what is AI. And then you have like robots or something and they do like the inner workings of a computer and all the zeros and ones. So I agree. I think um that they're probably seeing stuff the whole time, that it's visually exciting and intriguing and sucking them in and helping them to feel like they're part of all these groundbreaking things. Um, yeah, I like that. So maybe as you're going through it, try to think about what they might be seeing, and I always like to think of it because I don't know. I usually often, well, sometimes I know, but a lot of the time I don't know what they're going to be seeing. So I try to read it as though I'm all that they have. So if they heard me talking like it was a radio drama, right? Like a show on a radio station, I still want them to be able to imagine everything in their head with how expressive I am. So that's something I try to do. So I try to just kind of imagine what I think might be there. And then I try to make my voice sort of create that world for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we try our first take here?
Artificial intelligence, once a concept of science fiction, and now an integral part of our daily lives. From voice assistants and recommendation algorithms to self driving cars and medical diagnostics, AI is shaping the future faster than ever before. But what exactly is AI? At its core, artificial intelligence is the ability of machines to learn, reason, and make decisions, just like humans. Though vast amounts of data and complex neural networks, I said through vast amounts of data and complex neural networks, AI can recognize patterns, generate creative content, and even hold conversations. AI is revolutionizing industries. In healthcare, it assists doctors in detecting diseases earlier and personalizing treatment plans. In business, it powers automation, streamlining operations, and enhancing customer experiences. In entertainment, AI composes music, writes scripts, and even creates art. As we stand on the brink of an AI driven world, one question remains: how will we shape this technology to serve humanity best?
Nice. Awesome. I love that. Yeah. I mean, I could even see that being like an IMAX like you know, part of a museum or something and like a field trip with kids or something, like I still think they would be mesmerized and focused because you had excitement and you had energy to your voice and you made it sound like it was really exciting and you were curious and so it makes, your listener feel curious too. So, um I really liked you had a lot of variation with the pitch, with the pacing, with the pauses, observing those. So, a lot of really good things right off the bat. So, what was maybe your favorite thing that you did there?
Um, I don't know. I felt like I was a little bit better once I finally got to the end.
Yeah.
Um, I think
Yeah, I think I
it
agree with
flowed.
that.
Yeah.
Like you kind of warmed up into it. I think at the beginning it did feel a little bit like effortful, like you were just kind of like a car just warming up, that it just got cranked, it's just turning on and it's just warming up. So maybe it's not as smooth right as you're, pulling out of the driveway. But then once you get on the highway, you're like, okay, it smooths out, it's warmed up then, and it's just smooth sailing. So I feel like I totally get that feeling of in the very beginning, it's like, all right, so here we go. And it just takes you a second to get going. So I think that's pretty normal. And that was our first time going through it. So totally makes sense that as you went, you would feel like you got better and better. So I agree with that. It definitely was smoother towards the end. Like at the very beginning, it was just a teensy bit choppy, like just like maybe you were kind of thinking about what you wanted to do before you did it, which there's nothing wrong with that. So with that, it's just kind of practice. It's just do it again and it'll be better this time. So thinking and reflecting on what you just did, what would you say if we do it again? What would be the main focus you want to have? What would be the thing that you're like, this I feel like could really take it up a notch? Um, One thing I was thinking
Hmm.
is that time through you made it sound just like really exciting from the get-go. I was
Hmm.
thinking, what if you make it kind of like mysterious at the beginning a little bit, because they're like, once a concept of science fiction, like I feel like you could kind of play into that, like, what even is it? And man, like thinking about it, we had all these movies about like robots taking over the world and stuff, and like The Matrix, and now it's like we're living in a world where it's like, could those things happen? When before it was like, oh, that could never happen, you know? And so I feel like you could put a little bit more mystery into that, and then you could maybe have a shift into all the exciting things that AI can do for us. I think that could be one cool thing to do to try and, see if we like it. And then do you have any thoughts that you're like, oh, I feel like I could try this or I should do more of that?
I do like the idea of doing the mysterious beginning because I mean there's questions there and it's kind of
Right.
like what is this thing?
Hmm.
Um, I mean, and I believe the second half is kind of like answering
Right.
some of the questions and like
Yeah.
basically how it's going to be a part of our lives.
Hmm.
Um, so
And
I
if
kind
there
of
are people who are kind of nervous about AI or who are concerned, like people who are like, I don't know about having a car drive itself, like I can't even imagine my mom really being keen on that. Whereas I'm like, I'm cool with it. I'm like, I would love for my car to just drive me there. Um, but I feel like my grandpa or my mom would probably not at all be keen on that. And so thinking about stuff like that too, that it's reassuring and it's saying, see all these ways that AI can actually be used, that we can work with it and it can be a tool that makes the world better. That it's not taking over and destroying the world, but we can utilize it to better serve people, to be able to, search through diseases that could possibly be a thing faster, things like that. Whereas, like maybe in the past, you had to have people hand, by hand, go in a lab and like do blood testing, and maybe now a computer can do it for you. So that kind of thing. So I like that idea of it kind of reassuring them towards the end and saying, here are all the really great things about it and ways that it can really improve the world. Um, and just sort of like, you know, making all of their trepidation about it, just like smoothing that out and being like, I promise it's a good thing. So yeah. So let's go ahead and try that and see what you come up with.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I just had like the urge to, I feel like I'm going to sneeze,
Oh, I know that feeling.
but now it doesn't feel like it's coming. You call it and then it come. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Artificial intelligence, once a concept of science fiction, now an integral part of our daily lives. From voice assistants and recommendation algorithms to self-driving cars and medical diagnostics, AI is shaping the future faster than ever before. But what exactly is AI? At its core, artificial intelligence is the ability of machines to learn, reason, and make decisions, just like humans. Through vast amounts of data and complex neural networks, AI can recognize patterns, generate creative content, and even hold conversation. AI is revolutionizing industries. In healthcare, it assists doctors in detecting diseases earlier and personalizing treatment plans. In business, it powers automation, streamlining operations, and enhancing customer experiences. In entertainment, AI composes music, writes scripts, and even creates art. As we stand on the brink of an AI driven world, one question remains: how will we shape this technology to serve humanity best?
Nice. That was really different than the first take. I like it. Yeah, you definitely totally changed the tone of it. So what did you think of that?
Um, I had a lot of mistakes in there just because there's just a lot of words, but I did
Right.
think I liked this one better for some reason. I felt like it was more like intriguing. I was trying to go
Hmm.
for,
I agree with that.
don't you
Yeah.
want to know about this? Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, it's a totally different feel. Like the first time through, I feel like you could use that for like the school field trip kind of thing. Like that would definitely be more what I would pick if we had, say, middle schoolers that were watching this and it was made for them. But I think if I was doing it as more of a like late night airing, like the kind of audience that would be watching stuff like 60 Minutes, then I'm
I
probably
hear
going to do
you.
more
60
of
minutes,
the
15 minutes.
second choice. Yeah, right. That it's like, so depending on my audience, depending on the goal, then I'm going to do something different with it. And it's really interesting to see how you can take that exact same script and if you use it for different purposes, then it's going to come across totally differently. So yeah, I think knowing your audience, knowing the purpose of it is really helpful. And then usually, not always, but usually for an audition, they're going to give you some kind of guidance. So they'll say, here's what it's for, and here's our target audience, here's what we're thinking we want. But occasionally you get an audition where they tell you nothing, and you're like, I just get to make a choice then. So then you come up with something. And I agree. I feel like the second version was a little bit more intriguing, that it feels a little more like what's going to happen next? Whereas the first one felt a little more like a celebration of AI. So depending on my purpose here, I might do something different. If this was, say, like an internal video to send out to the whole company celebrating a big leap that we've made as a company. Maybe we just have been doing all this research and we just had a huge breakthrough, right? And we're celebrating the ways that AI is changing the world and our company is part of that. Then that might be a different feeling too than that, idea of if this is a documentary style thing, exposing AI and educating people on it who really don't have any frame of reference for it and who maybe are, adults learning about it for the first time. So, yeah, I think that knowing your target audience is going to be really helpful. So, then kind of reflecting on what you just did, is there anything that you would want to do differently? I know you said that, it's long and there's some, funny phrases and things. So you probably would just need to practice saying them. But was there anything that you felt like you would still want to change about it?
I think that I was more consistent in like the dynamics from the
Hmm.
top half and the bottom half of this
Yeah.
one. Um, I don't know, but I think I preferred the different making the top part and the bottom part like
Yeah. I agree
different.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was something I noticed as well, that instead of it having kind of one tone throughout, we had a more clear beginning, middle, and end, which is something that I always think about for my auditions or when I have a shorter script. So in an audition, my goal is to show them as much as I can in a short window of time. So I don't always even do it the way that I would do it as a final product or if I was actually hired, because my goal then is to show them variety, to be like, here's what I sound like when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm angry, when I'm scared, when I'm confused, when I'm in awe, right? I want them to have an idea of the different things I can do. If I only show them one tone throughout, they don't know if that's all I can do. But if I show them a wide variety, they're probably thinking, oh, you can do all kinds of things and you're probably directable and you can, be flexible. So that's one key element I always think about if it's an audition. I want to show them as much as I can in a short window of time. If I was actually hired for this, then I need to know what is it going to be used for and what's the purpose. I feel like they talk quite a bit about use in the medical world, which is pretty cool. Mm. One thing that I think is pretty cool is that they try to touch on ways that AI is useful in a whole bunch of different areas. So I might try to bring a little bit of a difference in the way that I express when I'm talking about those different ways that it's used. So, like, maybe at the beginning, it's a little more like mystery and suspense kind of a thing. Um, and then maybe in the middle, I go into more like educational, like what is AI? Here's the definition. And then, later on, maybe like kind of like selling them on it, like no matter what your industry, this is useful for you. In healthcare, here are some ways it can help you. Are you in marketing? Wouldn't it be really nice if you didn't have to do all this tedious planning out of, social media campaigns and things? It can do that for you, you know, um, like that kind of a thing. So a little bit more of being like,
The sales. You put
yeah,
it
like why should you be in favor of this and not, fearful of it? Um, and then like at the end too, because I think it is pretty clear, from the earlier part too, that it's like, okay, this is kind of sci-fi and it's like the future is going to change. And, why would we want a computer to be able to think like a human? And I think there is some debate on like ethical considerations um and so I think at the end when you ask that question, like using it to serve humanity, I would probably like leave aside the salesy kind of sound and be a little bit more like,
We control this.
yeah, and also like being compassionate towards the people who are really concerned and who are upset about it too. Um, and going like, hey, like reassuring them and being like, we are using it for helping people, not using it against people, kind of a thing. Um, so yeah, so I probably would try to do, you know, thinking about the different chunks because it's almost like different paragraphs almost to me, and just giving like each chunk of it a little bit of a different sound. Yeah, can
Yeah,
we try that?
sure. Artificial intelligence, once a concept of science fiction, now an integral part of our daily lives. From voice assistants and recommendation algorithms to self driving cars and medical diagnostics, AI is shaping the future faster than ever before. But what exactly is AI? At its core, artificial intelligence is the ability of machines to learn, reason, and make decisions, just like humans. Through vast amounts of data and complex neural networks, AI can recognize patterns, generate creative content, and even hold conversations. AI is revolutionizing industries. In healthcare, it assists doctors in detecting diseases earlier and personalizing treatment plans. In business, it powers automation, streamlining operations, and enhancing customer experiences. And in entertainment, AI composes music, writes scripts, and even creates art. And as we stand on the brink of an AI driven world, one question remains: how will we shape this technology to serve humanity best?
Nice. I liked that a lot. That was really nice. I think another really cool thing about it is that it kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat. Like, what's going to happen next? What are you going to say? What's going to be the next thing that comes up about AI? Is there something I haven't heard about? So I like the changes, particularly because it kind of keeps me on the edge of my seat and like, what's she going to say next? So I think that's a really nice component of it. And I feel like honestly, if you did that for the final product, it would work great. But I also feel like it could work really well as a sample clip or an audition. So, really nice there. Yeah. Was there anything in particular that stood out to you that you're like, I want to remember that? Or, okay, this was different and I want to be sure that can like use that in the future? Or, I
Yeah,
kind of liked this better last time.
no, I tried to break it up into the three bits that we were talking about. I felt
Hmm.
like that I could see what you were talking about. Like I felt like it starts off kind of like an introduction, and
Yeah.
then you get into the definition of things, and then you got into like how cool it is, and then at
Hmm.
the end it's kind of like, you know, making them think. So that's
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah, I like that. Making them think. Yeah, nice.
so
Because, like, ideally, I mean, I personally am not someone who, like, is really excited about walking into a restaurant or something and being like, oh, I get to talk to a computer. Yay. But, ideally, it sort of like frees up certain jobs or things so that people can do something else, like that hopefully it means that the world life becomes easier for everyone and that, we can maybe provide opportunities for other things or, housing for everyone or things like hopefully, long term, it turns out to be that it totally reshapes the world. and makes everything easier for people so that maybe like we don't have to have people in minimum wage jobs and things that they could be in a better situation. So ideally, that's what we hope for the future, right? So yeah, like challenging people too to reflect on, how could you use AI to better serve humanity and how can we collectively do that? Um, so I like thinking of it as like you're challenging them, to really think about this too. That's really nice. Cool. All right. So then let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So this one is about depression. Um, I mean, it seems kind of like a pretty straightforward. I could see this being part of like a textbook. Um, it could be part of a documentary kind of thing. It could be part of I don't know, even like a podcast or like a YouTube series on how the brain works. It could be educational material for counselors or advocates who work at advocacy centers or things. So, I mean, I feel like it could be multiple things. This could even be like for teachers, like, that a school says, hey, like, we want to do this suicide prevention and mental health training to like help teachers, better serve their students and look for the warning signs and things. And um, so yeah, I could see this used in different ways for different purposes. Um, so yeah, what do you imagine that this might be for?
Um, yeah, I could see this being like I don't know, maybe you're learning about different mental health
Hmm.
disorders and you hover over depression and this would be like
Hmm.
the explanation for that or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Something like yeah.
Yeah, like it could be like an interactive like computer program to use for like
Studying or
doctors or
uh,
counselors or
DSM-5 or something. I don't
school
know.
counselors. Yeah, exactly. Like it's a learning tool. So we could think of this as kind of like an e-learning kind of script. Then, so for e-learning, I always try to sound. So one thing is I don't want them to be bored. So I try to make it sound like it's something that I'm genuinely interested in and I find really fascinating. Um, and I hope that by me sounding like I'm really excited to learn this thing, that hopefully they will be too. But in this kind of a situation, I'm talking about depression. So I'm probably going to approach it a little bit more compassionately. Um, and sounding like I'm, trying to be empathetic and understanding and kind about it and going, this affects millions of people and you know, the these people are around us all the time whether we realize it or not. And I'm, talking about the reasons people have it and I'm like, it's they have imbalances in their brain chemistry. Like this is a science thing and their levels are disrupted and so like being um like more understanding but then also educational and I feel like I'm probably not going to be like, it's so exciting to learn about depression, guys, like I would be if we were doing history or like, let's do a science experiment, Um, so I'd probably be a little more like factual, and serious in certain moments, but then a little bit more kind in other moments. Um, when I'm talking more about research, maybe I'm a little more like clinical or academic in that moment. But then, at different times when I'm talking about persistent sadness, that kind of thing, being a little bit more caring in that moment. So I feel like this one is a little bit a little bit different than my typical like normal e-learning kind of thing. If I was doing like an HR thing or being like, "Hey guys, I'm really excited to share all the new things that, all of our new benefits that we have for you guys," or things like, you know, let's learn all about the life cycle of a frog for like little third graders or something, that's going to be a very different vibe than this one. So yeah, so let's just try it and see what you come up with, and we'll go from there.
Depression is a complex mental health disorder that affects millions of people worldwide, characterized by persistent sadness, loss of interest, and a range of emotional and physical symptoms. Depression can significantly impact daily life. While often misunderstood as a temporary mood or personal weakness, scientific research has shown that depression is a multifaceted condition involving biological, physiological, or I should say psychological, and environmental factors. Depression is primarily associated with imbalances in brain chemistry, particularly involving neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, whatever
Oh,
that
norepinephrine.
norepinephrine,
Norepinephrine.
norepinephrine, hypercalorie.
I know that one because I have food allergies and I carry an EpiPen.
Norepinephrine,
Yep.
norepinephrine.
Yeah, so if you
These
think of
chemi-
epinephrine, which would be
epinephrine,
like the EpiPen ingredient, norepinephrine. Yeah.
norepinephrine,
I think that's what it like turns into after you inject it or something. Norepinephrine.
norepinephrine.
Yeah, it's
These
a
chemicals,
mouthful.
that's a lot. Oh, so that's a good, yeah. These chemicals help regulate mood, motivation, and emotional stability. When their levels are disrupted, depressive symptoms can emerge. Brain imaging studies have revealed structural differences in individuals with depression, including changes in the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex, regions responsible for memory, emotional processing, and decision making.
Nice. Yeah. Good. All right. So I definitely heard the that caring element that you're being very compassionate about this. And I could definitely hear that like in an internal training video for like a school system or an advocacy center or you know maybe an HR department or continuing ed for some kind of facility that's like a recovery center, like a youth group home or something, that it's people who are in those caring professions. Definitely I could see them having this be part of their e-learning, or as part of a like a textbook that you're narrating that people listen to while they drive to and from school or something. So yeah, I definitely hear that compassion. I would say I probably, because it is pretty like knowledge based, a lot of it, like when you have stuff like norepinephrine, serotonin, dopamine, um, I probably for those moments would probably make them a little bit more just sort of like instructional in those moments. Um, like when I'm talking about like the hippocampus, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, I probably would make those a little bit more like factual and educational. Um, but I do think I would have moments where I'm saying like significantly impacting daily life or, it being really misunderstood as personal weakness, um, those kind of things. And then I also think that it's kind of like hopeful when you say, scientific research has actually shown all of these things. So it's actually none of that. And because we know what it is, we can actually help people that are in this situation. So that in a way is kind of like encouraging, going, this isn't a choice. This isn't someone just being lazy. We're finding that it's XYZ, which means we then can help them. So I think you could also have a little bit of that moments where it's like, we've actually found this, which means this, which ultimately leads us to now, how do we use this knowledge to help people with depression, all of these millions of people? So I think you can put a little bit more of that in there, that kind of like hopefulness that comes along with that knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So give it a try.
Yeah. Let's try that again.
Okay. Depression is a complex mental health disorder that affects millions of people worldwide. Characterized by persistent sadness, loss of interest, and a range of emotional and physical symptoms, depression can significantly impact daily life. While often misunderstood as a temporary mood or personal weakness, scientific research has shown that depression is a multifaceted condition involving biological, psychological, and environmental factors. Depression is primarily associated with imbalances in brain chemistry, particularly involving neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and
Yeah, that
norep.
I run into words honestly like almost daily that I'm like, how do I say that word? And then I have to look them up. So you will
I
learn
apologize.
you'll
And
learn
you
a
you
lot
said
of
it,
new
or you
words
have
in voiceover. Yes,
F
norepinephrine.
norepinephrine. See, it's
Yeah,
just
that's
like
tricky. That's a 5 syllable word.
norepinephrine. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So, involving neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These chemicals help regulate mood, motivation, and emotional stability. When their levels are disrupted, depressive symptoms can emerge. Brain imaging studies have revealed structural differences in individuals with depression, including changes in the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex, regions responsible for memory, emotional processing, and decision making.
Nice. Good. Yeah, I'd much rather listen to that than like you know, some professor who's just rambling on in a monotone or something.
Yeah.
As you'll see here, blah, 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 right? So yeah, I feel like that's a lot more engaging, and it kind of like sparks our curiosity, and it's like, oh, tell me, what has science found? And oh, really? Like, okay, tell me more. Like it makes me curious to hear what else science has discovered. And like, now I'm like, oh, okay, so it's just a chemical imbalance. Can we put those chemicals into their brain? Can we how do we get the body to create those chemicals? So now it's got me all like curious and excited about the next section. So taking something that could at first glance seem kind of dry and like, that some people might be like, oh, it's just kind of like, let me tell you all about this science and this research, blah, blah, blah. Like, and turning it into something that's really engaging, going, so many people have it. You probably know people or even have people in your family that have experienced depression, um, and going, this is really widespread. And in the past, people probably did really look down on people with it, but now we've learned all these new things. And so I think that is pretty exciting. And so being able to find ways to make it matter to the listener, finding ways to get them curious about what you're saying. Um, we just want to be as compelling as we can be. So I think that's always a really big goal is engaging your listeners, engaging the audience. So I think that you're doing that with both of these. So if you were going to maybe give yourself one key takeaway for these today, what would you say that main key takeaway is?
Um, Practice the crazy big words. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, yeah, I think so. Like, honestly, I'll run into phrases that maybe at first glance seem simple, and then I try them and I go, man, this is like a tongue twister. So, even just simple practice on tongue twisters, challenging yourself to learn new big words regularly and practice saying them. Um, I signed up for this email that's like a word of the day email. So then they just send you a new word to learn every day. And then I'll like, practice saying it and, maybe try it in a sentence. And but even honestly, even just in the voiceover world, I'm constantly learning new words and, about places that I didn't know existed or, learning totally made up words for a sci-fi universe, you know. Um, so
I have a
you
question for you.
definitely, yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Is my husband
Oh no, we got frozen.
words are some of the words are foreign, and
Oh,
then
yes,
they
yeah.
like use an accent when they say the foreign word.
Right.
Like, what is your thoughts on that? Because like I like it personally, because I'm like, if your name is, Conchita Gonzalez, I why not say that, the
Right.
way
Say it the way that you would say it. Like
exactly.
Maria, like actually
Exactly.
say it the way they would say it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Or like if it's your name, you know how to say your name.
Right.
But I know that like I've heard people say, why do they do that? Why can't they just say,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
So,
it takes people out of it sometimes.
right. Well, I do think that there are certain phrases that do kind of sound funny. Like if I, am saying with an American accent, pop into the loo or the boot and the bonnet of the car, that's a little odd, you know?
Mhm.
So, uh, if it's a name, I usually always try to say it the way that they would say the name. Um, like a place or a person's name. If it's phrases like that, because it is kind of awkward, sometimes you'll have someone who's Australian who writes a book and then has an American narrate it because they feel like it will connect more with American audiences then. But then you'll run into things where you go, we would not say this phrase ever. And then you just have to kind of do your best with it, which is a little bit awkward sometimes. And so I just try to kind of put the inflection and the attitude that I would put into it. Um, but sometimes I literally will kind of read through some of it and I'll go to them and say, do you want me to do it in that accent? Because it is going to be a little bit odd for me to say some of these phrases with an American accent. So sometimes I will go to them and ask that kind of thing. With a recent book, what I ended up doing was for the narrator, I did the American accent. For the character, I went ahead and I did of the characters, I did others. So I had like a Spanish accent, I did a London accent. So I had to do like different characters had different sounds. Because I just was like, some of these phrases are going to sound really weird if I try to do them in an American accent, which is what they originally told me to do. So after talking with them, that's what we landed on. Yeah. So that is a really good question. If it's a name, I try to say it the way that the people of that country or um like a city name or something. I usually try to use the like official their pronunciation or a character's name the way that they would say it based on where they're from. Um but yeah, sometimes that's tricky as a narrator because sometimes things are just worded in strange ways or even different spellings because in England and in America we have different spellings. So
Oh,
depending on if people learned like Queen's country, you know, grammar and spelling and whatnot. So that can
that's
even be
confusing.
kind of funky sometimes as an American reading it because you go, wait a minute, like is that spelled wrong? And sometimes it's absolutely not spelled wrong. It's just spelled differently than the way we spell it. Um, so that is kind of like a line we kind of tiptoe along. Um, so yeah, I mean, ideally, I would say if a book is written by a person from New Zealand, a New Zealand person probably ought to narrate it. If a person is from South Africa, ideally having a South African narrate it because of that reason, because of the phrasing and the words that would be different for the different regions. Um, just because everywhere you go, they have different phrases for that place and things that are commonly said. And so if you have someone who's not, you know, from that place, it'll sound really odd. Like if there's an Irish author who had me narrate their book, that would be odd if they were like, do it all in an American accent. Because I guarantee there are going to be many things that I'll go, we would never say this. Like, I don't even know what that means. And so that can be kind of a tricky thing to navigate. Ultimately, the publisher and or director and or author are going to tell you what to do, and you have to listen to them. So if they say to you, read it as written in your American accent, then you say, aye, aye, Captain. You say, you got it. And then, you just don't share it to your social media platforms or something. If you're like, I don't really want people to hear me butchering that, you know. So we ultimately do the best we can, but I usually just if I'm not sure, I look it up online and I try to find the correct pronunciation and then I practice saying it and try to do it to the best of my ability. Occasionally I run into things that I go, I can't find it online. So then you have to go to the author. Like, for instance, in a sci-fi book, there might be made up things that don't exist, or like ancient civilizations
For Harry
that don't
Potter,
exist.
there's so many words that
Right,
don't exist in Harry Potter.
exactly. So then you have to go to the writer and say, how do you want this said? How do you want this name pronounced? How do you envision this? And you can say, I was thinking it's probably this, but I'm curious what you think. And I've actually had authors say to me, like, I have an idea in my head, but I really just want to see what someone else does with it and just sort of be like, free reign. And I've also worked with people who are very nitpicky, which is okay. It's their baby and that's fine. And who are just like, I want it exactly this way. And that's okay too. So depending on the person, you'll kind of feel your way out with them. But yeah, that is a tricky thing to navigate. So you do your best. And
Got
when in doubt, ask the person who hired you.
it. Got it.
So yeah. Ultimately though, I thought this was really well done. I know that these scripts are a little bit longer. Usually narration scripts are going to be longer, even with a narration reel. Occasionally you'll see 2-minute long ones instead of 1-minute long reels. And then whereas normally we say 60 seconds max, and then like I might squeeze 6 different characters that are all like approximately 10 seconds into a character reel. Whereas if I'm doing a 60-second narration reel, I might do 3 scripts, you know, and that's it because they're more long form usually. Yeah. So if I was doing, a 60-second narration reel, I'm probably not going to have it just be like boom, 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 boom. It's probably like 4 at most, where they're at least like 15 seconds each. But I probably would stick with more like 3 of them at like 20 seconds each because that's normally what you'll run into. They usually want to hear a longer sample. Um, but also when you're building your profiles on audiobook sites, or narration jobs and whatnot, you can actually list individual clips. So you can put like a 5 minute long sample of you narrating something in that case. And then they don't have to listen to the whole thing if they don't want to, but it's up there if they want to check it out, you know? Um, so yeah, usually with narration, like normal auditions, I would say, like other types of auditions are usually going to be shorter, like a commercial or a character script. It could honestly be like one line, and that's all you record and send to them. And I'll sometimes do like three different takes just because I maybe they didn't give me very specific,
Correct.
direction, and then it's only one line. So I'm like, oh, I'll send you three different takes and you can pick your favorite. But with narration, usually it's longer. I'd say it's usually like at least a couple minutes of an audition. Now, they do sometimes send you really long things, and I just don't do that. I'm like, I'll give you 5 minutes max because I'm like, come on, guys. I'm like, shortlist me and I'll do more. So I usually honestly stop about 2 minutes if they send me a really long narration script. Um, and then I'm like, if you shortlist me and you want to hear more, I'm happy to narrate some more for you. But I'm like, out of the hundreds to thousands of submissions you're going to get, you're probably going to listen to like 10 seconds of this, even if you get to it. So I'm like, 2 minutes, that's what you get. And then if they want more, they can ask. So, so that's kind of where what I do. And I have been hired for many a book. So I don't even know how many. I honestly, like, at some point stopped listing them on my resume. I just was like, inquire for more. Like, I had like 40 on my resume and was getting to like 8-point font. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I just like deleted a bunch of them and put it at like 12-point font. And I was like, inquire for more. Like, it was
Just
like,
put the most recent stuff and then
yeah, I was like, I'm not even gonna bother anymore. So like, yeah, I'll put the most recent stuff and just delete. And I do have like a CV for myself to keep that's like 6 pages long, but that I have, my like one pager that's like, here are some highlights of recent things. I don't list any commercials. I just say inquire for conflicts, is what I say. Because sometimes you have like where they're like, oh, you did a Lincoln Motors thing and now you can't for 2 years like do any other car companies, like they buy exclusivity or whatever. So I'm just like, inquire for conflicts. I don't even list any of them. So yeah,
easy.
I list a lot more like characters from things, but yeah, I'm just like, I've done too many audiobooks to list, and commercials again. I'm just like, ask if it's a conflict and I'll let you know. And then, yeah. And then I just put the most recent things, and then like special skills or whatever, if you want to list like accents or whatnot that you're comfy with, or editing things you're skilled at, or like what equipment you have and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really just, you just do the best you can do. But yeah, narration is honestly, it's really just like reading out loud, but keeping their interest is the key. So, how do we do that? Being clear, reading what's on the page, and making it engaging and captivating for your audience. So I think you're getting there. It's really exciting.
Yeah. I find this fun. So thanks for
Yeah.
answering my questions too. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, be thinking about what you want to work on next time if you want to do more characters or some commercial work or maybe some different types of narration as well. I think one of the most fun, but also one of the most challenging things is doing dialogue with fiction narration, where you sometimes they just want it in your voice, sometimes they want a subtle change, and sometimes they want full-on character voices. So I think that is super fun and rewarding work, but it also is a lot of
Hard.
work. So to
Sounds
create all the
good.
different character voices. So, but it can be really fun. So that could be maybe something that we work on one of these weeks. Okay.
That sounds like fun. All
All
right.
righty. Well, have a great night, Shamara. I'm so glad your
Thank
husband's back home
you.
safe. And I'm
Me
glad you
too.
had a great visit with your mom. And I hope you have a good rest of your week. I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you. See you.
Bye,
Bye.
Shamara.